This video and upcoming videos are primarily for those without sight. The reason for this is because a little while back I met a blind woman who followed my posts religiously, and she took a strong interest in my works of fiction. I'm a published writer, however I don't have a large fan base, with maybe the exception of Europe, where my writings seem to be wanted more and are worthy of positive comments than here in the United States. So, if the mountain won't come to Muhammad, Muhammad will have to go to the mountain, and that is what I'm doing here. So join me a spell and see if you too take an interest in my writing. Here it is, we go, the beginning of my horror fantasy novel, Darkness Within. I do so hope you enjoy my work. With slow deliberation, the thing that was Alicia rose from the pool of darkness beneath its throne, a shapeless bulk of immense proportion, horrifying and preternatural, an unutterably hideous mass of amorphous putrescence which filled the throng that was standing and watching with sensation of unimaginable terror and helplessness. It was slimy, morbid, and ghoulish, seething, searching, stewing forth, with long tentacles and grotesquely twisted appendages that moved with a repulsive kind of writhing, protruding from its horrid bulk of potted pustules that glittered sickly with the diabolical light of dark imaginings. A collection of eyes, some sunken and separated, others floating on stalks that wriggled and undulated horribly, covering almost the entirety of the vile epidermis of the abomination in a multitudinous presentation, looking, peering, seeking in multiple directions simultaneously, and glistening with a certain kind of malefic glee, while many mouths further covered the epidermis of the things, filled with fangs separated by spiny teeth and serpentine tongues, babbled with voices of the damned, screaming with torment and sanity lost. A weekend at the cabin becomes a journey into a nightmare of inexplicable horror for 14 young adults and college students who unwittingly breach the veil between our world and another, one of unspeakable evil. Here they must confront the hideous entity of this realm, lest the world that they know ceases to exist, lost to the heart of chaos and oblivion. This tale is dedicated in loving memory to Dean and Midge, two beautiful women in spirit and deed. The time spent with them went by far too swiftly. For my grandfather Jack, whose time spent in the world made my childhood a heaven, he taught me what was good and right, how to be a man, and most of all how to dream. And for my wife, who could always keep the magic alive. Darkness Within, Prologue. 9 months ago she had been raped, and now she was pregnant. At the age of 17 she would be a mother, but she didn't want to be a mother. Not when the father of the child was some nameless, faceless man from out of the darkness of the street. The father was evil, and the baby that she carried was from the seed of the man's depravity, and the child would be evil as well, vile, malevolent, malicious, and abomination. She knew this. Her dreams told her this. Nightmares of a dark and formless apparition with multitudinous identities loomed over her in the night, with the faces of malformed and malefic demons, grinning and howling. From the very moment she felt it in her body, moving, wriggling, churning, squirming like a pit of vipers, she knew the baby was vile, knew that she didn't want to be any part of it, didn't want it to be any part of her. She spent days and nights at the altar of her church, praying to God to release her from this atrocity, or see to it that the child was stillborn when it came into the world. She would have had an abortion, but the church discouraged it, and the pastors explained to her that it was a terrible ordeal that she'd been through. But don't let the evil of what man has done rob God of the miracle that he has begun in you. Don't murder the baby on behalf of man's sins. But it wasn't a miracle. It was a travesty, a horror, and the child, whether her pastors wanted to believe it or not, was pure and unadulterated evil. Perhaps her boyfriend had sensed it too, though he tried to mask his feelings following the rape. In some ways he blamed himself for not being there when it happened. But what could he have done? Protect her? The rapist had a knife. She was left with that evidence by a scar that he made a thin line across her throat. She thought he was going to kill her while he performed his vile deed, or maybe kill her afterward. She had been terrified, and she started praying to God then, but the man had slapped her face, threatening to cut her tits off if she didn't shut that shit up. So she prayed silently as tears spilled from her eyes, praying to God to deliver her from this moment. And if he truly had listened, then his answer was found in the mercy of the moment where she fainted away from this reality. She was found and taken to Mercy Hospital, where she was examined and asked more questions than she cared to remember. The nameless, faceless man had made her pregnant then, although that would take a little time to discover. And before and after the news of her pregnancy, everything seemed to be filtered through a hazy veil of consciousness. Because of her disgust and terror of soon bringing the child into the world, her eating habits took a header. She became borderline anorexic, only eating when it was absolutely necessary, or when it mattered to keep up the ruse, for the sake of appearance, that she wasn't trying to starve the child, when in reality that's exactly what she was trying to do. In spite of what others thought, her mother, her pastors, the entire church, if God wanted this baby alive, he was going to have to show his hand. The day previous to her administration in Mercy Hospital, where she was first examined after the rape, and now ironically where she was expected to give birth to the evil inside her, she weighed only 104 pounds. Before her pregnancy, she had weighed 91 pounds. She had awoken from a series of nightmares where the father again loomed over her, a face of ever-changing masks, and a body as formless as the darkness that surrounded him. But she could feel him inside her, his seed burning her like frigid ice. On the day that she was admitted, she had awoke feeling nauseous, dizzy, and felt the swelling of an incoming migraine. She wanted to die. She wished she could die, even prayed for death. If God took her life, it wouldn't have been a terrible thing. It would have been a blessing, sweet release from the vile atrocity that would otherwise be born. On the way to the hospital, she suffered abdominal pains that were not in fact related to contractions. It was something even deeper. She sensed it. Her mother was worried sick to her own point of nausea. She was terribly concerned about her daughter's health. She had looked sickly for about 2 weeks. She hoped that her daughter's condition wouldn't affect the child in a detrimental way. She had wished that her husband were there with her, but he had passed on following a boating accident 6 years prior. Along with the dizziness, the nausea, the migraine, the girl complained about trouble seeing. It was as if a fog had moved in around the edges surrounding her field of vision. She had hoped it was God coming to take her away, but it wasn't. Not yet. Not until the baby was born. And the girl wondered in her state of delirium, could the devil exist without the presence of God? And suddenly she was terrified by the possibility of the implication. Further into her delirium, she demanded that her mother leave her at the hospital and go home. "Leave me to mercy's sake. Get out of my life, you ignorant, naive bitch. I told everyone that it's evil, god damn it evil, but you wouldn't believe me." The girl was put under sedation and monitored closely. Her screaming and cursing was subdued but not alleviated, and her mother had no choice but to wait in the lounge during delivery. She started to speak a litany of gibberish then. Sa, sokni, agnu, eblu o, liliti sudoma, sokni, agni. The fog grew thicker, and with it came the darkness. Shadows at first, and then shrouds enfolding her. She heard the doctor and the delivery personnel ranting, but she couldn't make out what they were saying, only the occasional demand, "Push, baby girl, come on, push." She supposed that she did that, as she was told, whether she wanted to or not. All she saw now was darkness. When the baby was brought into the world, the girl didn't see it. She didn't want to see it. Hearing it cry was insufferable enough. Her words, following the birth of the boy who would be called Daniel or Danny, were cryptic to the ears of all those in the delivery room, and with dread following unprecedented amazement would be the last words that the girl would say before death claimed her. "A child will be born in the darkness, and from the abyss will rise a man of great power, the harbinger of hideous. The darkness is coming. The darkness